It started like any other evening. I was home, sprawled on the couch, the glow of my phone the only light in the room. The day had been long, classes dragging on endlessly, and now I was just bored. I opened up Tinder, more out of habit than hope. The profiles blurred together, same smiles, same empty promises. Then I saw him. Jack. His profile was different. His age read 45, but he looked younger, early 30s at most. Dark hair, sharp jawline, eyes that seemed to know too much. His bio was simple: looking for a sugar baby, $700 weekly, no sex. My thumb hovered over the screen. It sounded too good to be true, and yet the promise of easy money was too tempting for a broke university student like me. I swiped right. Almost immediately, it was a match. My phone buzzed with a message. "Hey there, sweetheart." I cringed at the pet name but reminded myself, $700 is $700. I could overlook a lot for that kind of money. "Hey." Jack wasted no time. He told me he owned his own business, though he was vague on the details. We chatted for a bit, small talk that felt more like an interview. Then came the question I'd been waiting for. "I'll send the first payment through Venmo. What's your handle?" I gave it to him, still expecting the whole thing to be an elaborate scam. But then the notification came. $700. My heart raced as I stared at the screen. This was real. "You still there?" Yeah, sorry, just wow." "If you don't mind me asking, what exactly do you want in return?" His response was swift, nonchalant. "Just a few favors. Here and there. Nothing big." The way he phrased it set off alarm bells, but curiosity and the promise of more money kept me hooked. What kind of favors? His answer was simple, almost too simple. "For now, just a pickup. I'll send you an address." A pickup? For $700? It seemed innocent enough, but I knew better than to trust things that sounded too good to be true. Still, I wasn't in a position to turn down easy money. "Okay. From where?" "Not through Tinder. Let's switch to text. Here's my number." He sent it, along with the address for the pickup and his home address, where I was supposed to drop off the package. "There was a key under the blue flower pot by the door," he said. "Make sure to lock the door when I entered and again when I left." It all seemed odd, but I agreed, grabbed my keys, and headed out. As I drove, his last message buzzed in. "Remember, lock the door both times. It's important." The insistence was strange, but I brushed it off. How weird could it be? When I arrived at the pickup location, a man was waiting outside. He was massive, covered in tattoos, and had a presence that sent shivers down my spine. "You here for Jack stuff?" I nodded. He handed me a damp, stained box and told me to be careful as I loaded it into my trunk. His last words echoed in my mind. "Watch out." I drove to Jack's house, the box rattling slightly in the back, a sense of unease growing with every mile. Jack's house was impressive. Stone pillars, a pristine lawn, the kind of place you'd expect to see on a magazine cover. But as I pulled into the driveway, my eyes kept darting to the rearview mirror. The warning from that tattooed giant played over and over in my head. "Watch out." I shook it off. It was just nerves. After all, this was easy money. I grabbed the package from the trunk and made my way to the front door. The key was exactly where Jack said it would be, beneath the blue flower pot. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the heavy door creaking slightly as it swung shut behind me. The interior was just as grand as the exterior. Polished wooden floors, luxurious furniture, and an atmosphere that felt off. It was too quiet, like the house was holding its breath. I set the package on the coffee table, glanced around a little bit. My eyes lingered on the locked door for a moment. I considered leaving it unlocked, but Jack's insistence echoed in my mind. "Lock it both times." I locked the door and turned to leave, but a distant ring broke the silence. A phone. It wasn't mine. It was coming from somewhere deeper in the house. My first instinct was to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. I followed the sound to an office. There, on the desk, a phone vibrated, its screen flashing. Incoming call from Jack. Jack? I pulled out my phone, scrolling back to my last message. "Don't answer any calls that aren't from Marvin." My stomach tightened. Something wasn't right. I backed out of the office, leaving the phone unanswered. The house felt colder now, every shadow more pronounced. I quickly made my way to the front door, locking it behind me as I stepped outside. The drive back home was a blur. My mind raced with questions, but no answers came. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe Jack just had weird quirks, or maybe I was overthinking things, but the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. I made $700 for a simple delivery. That should have been the end of it, but Jack wasn't done with me. The next day, another text came in. Need you to switch cars for me. $800 this time. Address is in the message. Switch cars? What is this, a heist? I told myself it was just another odd job, no different from the first. I drove to the location where a sleek BMW waited. Inside the glove compartment, I found a set of keys for another car parked a few blocks away. I completed the switch, dropping the BMW off at Jack's house, locking up as instructed. Each task was stranger than the last. Deliver a briefcase. Spend an hour at that eerie house with Julio, the tattooed giant. Every favor came with strict instructions, and every time the payment was prompt. Need you to spend the night at my house. $1,000. Rules on the table. Spending the night? That's new. The money was good, but the stakes felt higher. Still, I agreed. That evening, I packed a bag and headed to Jack's house. The porch light was on, but as always, the driveway was empty. I let myself in, locked the door, and found the note on the dining table. Lock the door when you come in. Only answer calls from Marvin. Don't turn on any faucets between 9 p.m. and 11 p.m. Don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they say they are, after 10 p.m. If the closet door at the end of the hall is open, sleep in the library. If closed, sleep in any bedroom. The gardener comes at midnight. If he starts knocking on the windows, hide. Turn the TV on and let it play static through the night. Do not forget this. Help yourself to anything in the fridge. What the hell have I gotten myself into? The rules were bizarre, like something out of a bad horror movie. But the money, I couldn't ignore the money. I decided to stay. I tried to convince myself that it was just a weird night, just another task. But the list of rules, it lingered on my mind like a bad omen. I locked the door behind me, of course, and scanned the house one more time, checking every room. Everything felt strange, too polished, too silent. There was no sign of Jack, and honestly, part of me was relieved. I didn't want to meet him yet, not after everything. I walked around the house, inspecting the rooms that seemed to hide behind a veneer of luxury. I came across the library first. I knew that if the closet door at the end of the hall was open, I'd have to sleep there. But when I checked, it was closed. So, I set myself up in one of the bedrooms. I kicked off my shoes, tried to relax, but my nerves were on edge, and every shadow seemed to shift to the corners of the room. At 8:50 p.m., I decided to follow Jack's rule about the faucets. I brushed my teeth, used the sink once more before 9. The house's silence was suffocating. Couldn't shake the feeling that something was waiting just beyond my sight. I felt like I had stepped into something I didn't understand. The night dragged on. The stillness of the house became unbearable. I tried to distract myself, picked up my phone, but I couldn't stop checking the clock. Every minute felt like an eternity. Then, it happened. At exactly 10 p.m., a knock echoed from somewhere in the house. My heart skipped a beat. The knock came again, louder. I froze, holding my breath. Another knock, then another. It came from one of the windows. It was too quiet outside to be anything but deliberate. I remembered the rule. If the gardener comes, hide. But hide from what? Who was out there? I got up slowly, trying not to make a sound. I glanced around the room. The windows were covered by heavy curtains. I pulled one open, peeking out into the night. The garden was empty, but the knocking persisted. My mind raced. I should have called Jack. I should have checked the list again, but I didn't. I just stood there frozen. The knocking grew louder. Someone was out there, and they knew I was inside. I didn't want to make any noise. I crawled into the library and hid behind the armchair, watching the door like a hawk. It felt like I was suffocating in the dark. The knocking didn't stop. It was relentless. I checked my phone again. The screen lit up with another message from Jack. Stay quiet. Don't let him see you. Who, the gardener? But there was no way to know for sure. The knocking continued. Each tap reverberated throughout the house, louder now, like someone was trying to break in. But I stayed in the library, frozen, just following the rule. What was happening? Eventually, the house grew quieter, but the air in the room was thick with tension. Every sound felt amplified. I felt eyes on me even though I was alone. My phone buzzed again. I almost didn't want to check, but I had to. Gardner's gone. You're safe. For now. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I was holding. But something inside me was still unsettled, and Jack's cryptic messages were making everything worse. I tried to fall asleep. Every creak of the house sounded like footsteps, but I had no choice. I was trapped in the middle of a game I didn't understand. I eventually fell asleep, but it wasn't a peaceful rest. No. Every dream felt like I was drowning. In the morning, the house felt different. I woke up to the smell of something cooking. Coffee, eggs. Jack was in the kitchen. He was standing by the stove, just like in the picture. But it felt off, like this had all been a dream. Hey, good morning, Jack said as he turned to face me. His smile was wide, almost too wide. Hi, I said, my voice wavering. I sat down eating the scrambled eggs he'd made. The silence between us was thick, uncomfortable. I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just survived something. Something that wasn't entirely normal. So, how was it? Jack asked casually, like nothing had happened. I stared at him, trying to read his expression, but I couldn't. I wanted to ask him about the knocking, but I didn't. It was fine, I replied. Nothing weird happened. Cool, Jack said, his smile never faltering. I finished the meal, packed my things, and headed for the door, Jack following me to the car. As I started the engine, I felt his eyes on me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. Even as I drove away, I thought it was over, but I was wrong. I thought I could finally escape whatever twisted thing I had gotten myself into, but the moment I stepped into my apartment, everything shifted. I dropped my bag on the floor, tossed my keys onto the counter. My phone buzzed. It was Jack, just like the other times. I didn't even want to look at it, but I couldn't stop myself. Glad you made it back okay. Was everything all right at the house last night? I thought about it at that moment. All right? No, it wasn't just all right. It was weird. It was terrifying. But I couldn't let on that I was freaked out. I'd agreed to this. I accepted the rules, the money. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. Everything felt off. From the moment I walked into that house to the way the night dragged on with every little oddity that kept pushing me to the edge of insanity. Another text from Jack. I opened it, heart pounding. I noticed something. Did you forget to do something last night? Forget to do something? What was he talking about? I read the message over and over. What did I miss? I grabbed the list from my bag just to make sure I hadn't missed a single detail. I scanned it again. I stared at the words, the instructions that Jack had given me. The same words that had been so trivial to me at the time, and now they were haunting me. I had forgotten to turn the TV on. Another message. This one came with an image. I opened it. It was a picture of the TV screen, and there, standing in front of the screen, was Jack wearing the same smile. That eerie, unsettling smile that I had seen when he greeted me in the kitchen. I felt sick. What was going on? Why had he sent me that picture? Was he watching me? Was he tracking me somehow? I couldn't even fathom it. I looked out the window. The street outside was calm, like it always was. But there was something about the way the sunlight hit the pavement, the way everything felt too still, that made me uneasy. Another text, this time from a different number. Did you forget to follow the rules? I dropped my phone onto the couch, my hands shaking. I couldn't breathe. What was happening? This was no longer just a weird arrangement. It was spiraling out of control. I checked the name on the number. I didn't recognize it, but the message was clear. Whoever this person was, they knew what had happened last night. They knew about the rules. They knew about Jack. I couldn't keep up with this anymore. My heart was pounding. The walls were closing around me. This wasn't normal. None of it was. I grabbed my coat and rushed to the door, only to stop dead in my tracks. Another text popped up. We're outside. Don't try to run. I froze, heart hammering in my chest. I looked outside. My mind raced. Who were they? What did they want with me? I knocked at the door. I felt my pulse spike. I didn't know who it was, but I couldn't just open the door, could I? Not after everything. I crept to the window, parting the curtains just enough to get a glimpse. I could see shadows outside, moving in and out of view. They were too close, too many of them. Their faces were indistinguishable, but they were there, standing right outside of my apartment. I backed away from the window. My body went cold. I could hear footsteps approaching the door now, slow and deliberate. I scrambled for my phone, fingers shaking, and dialed 911. But the call didn't go through. My phone suddenly froze. No signal, no service. I was trapped. The door handle rattled. I couldn't breathe. The knocking started again, this time louder, more insistent. And the voice from the other side. "Let us in. It's Jack. We need to talk." The voice sounded like him, but it wasn't. I stayed still, my mind raced, my heart thundering in my chest. Who was really on the other side of the door? Was it really Jack, or was it someone else entirely? I could hear their voices on the other side. Jack's voice, or someone pretending to be him. The knocking got louder, more insistent. They were trying to break in. I felt the cold sweat bead on my forehead. The walls were closing in. Every instinct told me to run, to get out of there. But how? How could I leave when they were right outside of my door? I looked around the apartment. The windows were all locked. There was no way out. And with my phone useless, I couldn't even call for help. I remembered something. Something Jack had said earlier. Something offhanded. But maybe it wasn't just a coincidence. He told me, don't open the door for anyone, no matter who they are. And that had been the rule. This wasn't just some favor anymore. This wasn't a game. There was no Marvin. There was no one but me now. I had to face the truth. I didn't know what Jack was really involved in, but I knew enough to know that whatever he had gotten me into was far from ordinary. I couldn't rely on him anymore. I couldn't trust him. I couldn't even trust the man that I had been talking to all this time. There was only one thing left to do. I grabbed the kitchen knife. I wasn't planning on using it, but I needed something to steady my shaking hands, something to protect myself with. They wouldn't stop. They wouldn't leave. I had no choice. The door was the only thing between me and whatever nightmare they were bringing with them. The knock came again, but this time it was different. The voice on the other side of the door wasn't Jack's anymore. It was a strange voice, one that I didn't recognize.
You need to open up. We know you're in there.
My blood ran cold. Whoever it was, they knew I was in there. They knew I had nowhere to run. I thought of Jack, of his weird rules, of the strange messages. Was this his game? Was this his game? Or was it all just some twisted trap set by someone else? I couldn't stay here. Not anymore. I rushed to the window, to the one on the far side of my room. I pried it open, expecting the worst. But thank God, the street outside was quiet, empty. I could escape. I wasn't going to wait around to see what happened next. I wasn't going to let them drag me into whatever this was. I pulled myself through the window and onto the fire escape. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I just ran. Down the stairs, through the alley, and into the nearest street. I had to disappear. It felt like hours, but really it was only minutes. Minutes of sheer panic, of trying to escape the nightmare I'd walked into. I found a place to hide, an old coffee shop that was just closing for the night. The door had been unlocked. I slipped in, trying to steady my breathing. I sat there trying to calm myself down, trying to figure out what the hell had just happened. My hands were still shaking, my heart was still racing, and then my phone buzzed again. I almost didn't want to look at it, but I had to. I had to know if they were still out there. I opened the text. The name was familiar. Jack. But there was no message. Just a picture. The picture was from inside the coffee shop. It was taken just moments ago, when I had slipped in. There, in the corner, hidden just out of view, was a dark figure. A silhouette. They were watching me. They had been following me the entire time. I stared at the screen, numb. I couldn't stay here. I couldn't trust anyone. Jack, the people outside, the messages. It was all connected somehow. But I didn't know how much more I could take. I had to disappear. I had to get out of the city. I had to leave everything behind. And for the first time, in what felt like forever, I decided that I was going to do what it took. Whatever it took, I would get away. I would survive.